What's happening, fight fans? Welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, this podcast is going to be a little bit touch different. It has to do with combat sports, but it also has to do with the hot topic of Netflix docuseries, Mr. McMahon. And I'll tell you what, I reached out to someone who I haven't spoke to in about 2 decades. He used to be a staple on WFAN 66 with Jody McDonald on Saturday mornings, Saturday nights at 3 a.m. Sunday morning, technically. But I used to bake bagels, so I used to listen to him all the time. Mr. Rich Mancuso from Keep It in the Ring, and his podcast is on YouTube, Rich Mancuso YouTube channel. You go over there and subscribe to his channel. Richard, how are you?
George, been a long time. Welcome. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I don't know what time this is. Are we live or are you taping this?
We're not live. I'm taping this because I just got done baking the bagels and I need a little bit of a break. That's why we got you in here as quickly as we could.
Good. I've been up 24/7, so I don't.
24/7, Rich. Well, then you're used to it because I used to listen to you all the time, 3 a.m. with Jody McDonald. It used to be JM and RM
right.
on Sunday mornings. We haven't heard that in a long time, huh?
No, I miss it very much. It's been over 30 years, I think, right?
Yeah, 30,
yeah. It was at 3 a.m. in New York on Sports Radio 60 WFAN, where they've come a long way. And I'm still amazed at how many people still remember that. And yet again, on YouTube, a lot of the shows have been chronicled where people could log in and watch it. But I'm still amazed at how many people remember and will stop me somewhere or hear the voice and they'll ask me and blah, blah, blah. And they said, I grew up listening to you at 3 a.m. and if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known this. I wouldn't have known that. That's been a highlight of my long career. And I'll never forget that. Jody gave me an opportunity. We ran for about 3 years, and 3 a.m., we did real well. The wrestling promoters knew we were on, so they picked sponsor time at that time. And then wrestling was hot again. It was in that new era with Hogan and such. Right. I always had a lot to talk about. Phone lines lit up, and it was great. And I'll listen to those shows occasionally myself, and I wonder, what the hell did I do back then,
Well, I know, I got into a YouTube loop of you guys all the time. I mean, you used to guys have everybody on. You used to have Wade Keller. You used to have Steve Beverly would come on.
Dave Meltzer, the prominent guy out there now. He was beginning, and Meltzer and I will talk once in a while. He tells me too. I'll never forget that, because it helped him a lot. But we were servicing the fans at the time, and they were younger, and now those young guys are older, and they remember it, and it was a different era then, because the way to get the wrestling news then was WFAN with me, and the newsletters you'd get in the mail that you subscribed to was no social media where you can get it right now, but I was the info guy at many times, and, I would create the spoilers and what people wanted to know. And most of the time I got it right. Sometimes I got it wrong. But then again, that's still pro wrestling today, isn't it?
Yeah. And here's the craziest thing. If you think about it, you were probably one of the first, because now everybody's got a YouTube channel. But you were like one of the first, because really at that point, mainstream media wouldn't pick it up. Jody Mack put it on 3 a.m. But you were one of the first to have like a wrestling hour and to give information up that now you could readily get. But you were one of the OGs. You were one of the OGs who started this whole thing. And you were one of the first people who told me Kamala wasn't really from Uganda.
No, I know. And then the great one I used to get was, is Paul Orndorff dead? That was always a one. I used to get those crank calls every week, constantly. And what I did was I was in the business at the time, so I was able to know what was going on. And I became their source of information. And pro wrestling fans love rumors and gossip. And most of all, they like to know what's going to happen next. And, I was able to get that info. We all have our sources. I still do with the other sports work I do today as I continue my career, which is coming to an end because I'm getting old. But what I did with George is I gave the fans what they wanted to hear. And what really boggles my mind. Jody and I experimented with this. We had met somewhere and we became friends, and we had a connection with baseball and his dad with the New York Mets, where I was covering at the time also. What boggles my mind is that we experimented, we'd see where it goes. We didn't realize how popular it would get. And at 3 a.m., you're thinking people were asleep at that time. But they were all night owls. They were up. The cab drivers, the bagel man, wherever it was, and the fan, WFAN, which had the 50,000 watt reach all over the place. That was the perfect venue, the perfect outlet for it to be on, and it caught on. And after that, others did the same thing. Some tried, some failed, but I was like the originator of bringing back pro wrestling talk, but at 3 a.m. in the morning, that's what still befuddles my mind.
Well, New York is a city that never sleeps, but you remember you had like Doris from Regal Park, from the Bronx. There was so many people that would come in and just listen to it was almost like now where Facebook is, you have all these friends and you talk to, but this was legitimately like, it was so important for them to watch that, listen to that wrestling hour, and it had something to look forward to. Sort of like your stream is on YouTube now when you have your YouTube Thursday nights live at 8 p.m., people look forward to that. And is that something that you want to kind of bring back on a regular basis?
Yeah, I would like to, except the competition now is so much more. You bring up YouTube, you bring up all the other podcasts that are out there. And look, I might be still relevant, but not as relevant as I once was in the pro wrestling business. I'm not on that beat like I used to be. Whatever I get to know is maybe what you get to know and others get to know. I'm more now, and I've always been into boxing, and I do a lot of that. My show, Keep It in the Ring, live on Thursday nights on YouTube and Stream Punk Entertainment, is geared towards just, keep it in the ring, which I started being on Jody Mack's show at 3 in the morning. And it's a lot of boxing. I incorporate some UFC, MMA, which is also popular, and a lot of the pro wrestling talk, too. Not like it was when I was on the Fan talking pro wrestling, because I don't take the phone calls, which were unbelievable. We had to turn so many people away at 3 in the morning. But, I try and do more of an analysis of what's going on and what might you look forward to ahead with WWE, AEW, and some others. Primarily WWE, AEW is what I focus on. Nothing like I used to do on the Fan, but more of an analysis type and maybe what's to come ahead. But what I did years ago streamrolled into what people might be doing now, and that makes me happy, because back then pro wrestling was getting popular again, and pro wrestling did not have the avenues or the vehicles where the fan could get the information they're getting now. And I feel that what I did for, I don't know, we had a run for 3 or 4 years on the Fan. What I did then propelled what is going now in this era of technology where anybody can do it.
Yeah, and you could do it on a small budget, unlike a regular, WFAN is a massive budget.
That was, and I thought the Fan would eventually take it on then. To become something where I have a gig on that and doing that maybe once a week, because I was working for them a little bit from the beginning. I was doing sports updates. That didn't last very long also. But that didn't transpire because they felt pro wrestling then wasn't enough mainstream, and look where it's now. I mean, it's mainstream. It's all over the place. So I came in a little too early, I guess, before this new wave. Had I been doing this now on the Fan, I don't know where I'd be right now in life. I mean, right, with technology just changed everything.
Well, them going mainstream takes us to the reason why we brought you on the show. Now, like your show, we talk boxing and MMA mostly with Kevin Iole, Teddy Atlas, and Roy Jones, people like that. But we also
good people,
great people, and we also though gear towards wrestling for me, because I grew up in the wrestling world, watching weekly. I was the guy for wrestling because I got it from you on WFAN. So all my friends would ask me. Well, the docuseries Netflix put out, a 6-part docuseries, Mr. McMahon. Initially, what was your thoughts when you first heard about it? And after watching it, what do you think?
Well, two things. First of all, when I heard about it, I figured that's Vince McMahon, who I got to work with a little bit and did not like him at all. Secondly, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched 1 minute of it yet. One is because I don't subscribe to Netflix, and I won't because I'm not into these streaming services. However, I am aware of it. I know what's been the content. I know what's been discussed and what it's all about because I read up on it. And that's what I've been basically doing. And watching little excerpts here and there, but I have not watched. Maybe I will eventually. And one reason is not having Netflix, which is one reason. The other reason, it's not because I'm cheap. I'm far beyond cheap. I just don't believe in paying for all these streaming services. The other thing is that what's on there is probably something, and I wouldn't doubt that I already knew. Okay? Things that Vince McMahon was about that he's done, allegedly, which is, still alleged, a lot of things, but a lot of things that he did, I knew. And a lot of things that I heard from the talent, and I worked with a lot of that talent back then, I knew. So what is going to be new to me on that for me to watch it? And by all means, from what I've seen, some excerpts, and from what I've read, to me, it's just Vince McMahon. This is the man. I read the book Ringmaster as well. Mm-hmm. So, it's nothing that I wouldn't be shocked about. What's surprising me is how now there's a lot of things that he wanted maybe to retract or to take back or to take control of it. There's been a lot of controversy since its release as well, as you know.
Well, Matt Maxon is the one who put it together, the producer. He did a phenomenal job on it. Mm-hmm. I would highly recommend at some point just to watch it because it's done very well. Now, let's go back to your experiences that you've had with Vince McMahon, because that would be, if we can't get it from that Netflix series, which I'm sure you've heard everything that's happening in that documentary.
Well,
what was your experience with him, though? What was it? I know he's controversial. He's a lightning rod. But when you have that, look at the thing, what's going on with P. Diddy, okay? When you have that kind of money, isn't it not just like, it shouldn't shock you that these guys have got so much money that they're doing all this weird nonsense because they're either bored or they're just weird. It's one or the other.
Well, I don't know. We're all weird in one sense, aren't we? I mean, we love pro wrestling, so and they would say we're pro wrestling, that we're not normal people. But now it's become popular where we're not as weird as they say we were. The thing is that the limited dealings I had with him, no different from a lot of dealings of others in the pro wrestling business. It's just that type of business where weird things happen. And I'm not taking anything away from the talent. Very competitive, very outspoken, charisma. They have the charisma, the persona to be where they're at. I can only say this about Vince McMahon, the limited dealings. Right. In words I could say, arrogant, bully, control freak. Okay? Mm-hmm. All the other things that are alleged that he did, especially with the lawsuit and stuff. I mean, I don't know nothing about that, but I know that there were things going on that weren't right. I used to see things. I used to hear things in the business, with a sexual type of tone to it, and not very good. So it's not something I'm shocked about. However, the thing that hurts is, as much as one could dislike this man, and many do, you can't take away for what this man established, brought pro wrestling back on the map, took a risk, took it over from his father, Senior, and put wrestling back on the map, and started WrestleMania. And a lot of other promoters followed suit to get back into the business and run shows. And the issue I have with this whole thing now, like him or not, his legacy is damaged, and what he accomplished is not being talked about. That's the shame of all of this, George, because the man put pro wrestling back on the map, taking a risk. The bad part of it is how crooked, or if not say crooked, how stupid, I don't know if I can say stupid, but how much this billionaire he became just destroyed himself, but did not destroy the wrestling business because it's still going very strong. But Vince McMahon's name is like it never existed, did it? Because of the damage he caused for himself. That's what hurts. The man probably will never get inducted into the whole Hall of Fame that he started. The man probably will never go down in history as the guy that brought pro wrestling back, that resurged it. And I grew up with pro wrestling since I was 5 years old. Used to sit in front of the black and white TV at home and watch it when it was on a UFH signal with the antenna ears on top of the TV. I grew up with it. Bruno Sammartino was my idol. Got to know him, got to work with him. And Vince McMahon is reason why we are talking pro wrestling the way we are today. All the other guys can take credit for what they're doing. But without Vince McMahon, we're not talking pro wrestling at all, are we?
No. So that begs the question. If you were somebody who had a decision to make as far as putting him in the Hall of Fame, not putting him in, what's his legacy going to be if he's erased from a legacy, something that he started?
Well, legacy is a significant word. When we're talking about a legacy in sports, you think of the big names and you talk about accomplishments, records, and so forth. I mean, as a boxing guy, I could tell you, talk about Canelo Alvarez all the time. He's established a legacy as an undisputed champ at 168 and done this and that, pay-per-view, box office records, and so forth. Defends his championship all the time. The legacy here is how Vince McMahon, again, put pro wrestling back on the map. How Vince McMahon provided opportunity to talent to become what they became. Hulk Hogan, the classic example. Hulkamania is not Hulkamania without Vince McMahon, right? And all the others that followed suit. Legacy here also because he opened the doors to getting pro wrestling back into the mainstream, where we have now, at this point, pro wrestling not only on the networks, but streamed. And also, you had a network, WWE Network, that came into Peacock. That's all Vince McMahon, okay? Gates and records at the box office, merchandise sales and box office, merchandise records being sold for the talent. But most of all, opening up the territories. It wasn't just the WWE. He would get everyone involved. As shrewd businessman as he was, smart in the sense that he was able to get the pro wrestling industry together and was able to get the talent when he needed to get it, mostly because he had the resources, the money to do it, and give contracts to pro wrestling talent that we've never seen before. Again, Hulk Hogan, the main guy.
So let me ask you this. Vince McMahon, Dana White, who goes down as the greatest promoter you've ever known?
Good question. I'd have to say right now, Vince McMahon, though Dana White is starting to establish, if already has, his legacy with MMA and UFC. But I would say that Vince McMahon first. And I think Dana is not far from behind. If he's not there already, he's going to get there because we see what he's done and how he opened the door for a lot of MMA fighters that are making a little more money now than they ever did before. And also Dana White has the ESPN contract to deal with ESPN and their pay-per-view as an outlet that they never had before. And that's because of Dana White, another very good businessman. But I will tell you this, not as shrewd and not as controversial, no, he can be, than Vince McMahon has been.
I think Vince is from the old school, whereas he could be cutthroat. And I'm not saying Dana isn't, but after meeting Dana and Vince, I met Vince briefly, but Dana and I met and had a pretty long conversation with. He's a different guy. He's not the. I could see him, Vince McMahon, cutting, shaking your hand and then cutting it off when he.
Oh yeah.
Dana doesn't seem like that kind of a guy. He seems like a guy who, yes, he is a businessman. Yes, he's got to make money for his shareholders, but on the back end, he's going to take care of his fighters. He's going to take care of the people that took care of him to get to where he is. And that's the difference, I think. And I think
it really is. And he works with his talent. I mean, Conor McGregor, which is a never-ending story with him. And now he's speaking for Conor about when he's going to fight next, where Conor would always do that. It's different with McMahon because talent worked on a schedule, and they had to be where they had to be based on WWE's creative and their scheduling in all the territories. And, it's a very, very interesting question you pose about the two of them. But controversial, rootless, like they say, any other word that in the mean type of category can describe Vince McMahon over Dana White anytime. Outside, McMahon may not give that persona when he's in the public eye, but inside, not very well liked. And I have not talked to talent that worked for him over the years that say good things about him. They do not say good things about him. The only good thing they say about him is that he, as I just mentioned earlier, George, that he resurged the wrestling business and gave them opportunity they couldn't get anywhere else. And remember, back at the time with the war with WCW, it was WCW with a very limited roster. They had the money with Turner, of course, but not as much as Vince had on his own with his networks and his conglomerate that he had. But there's that bitterness because they felt he was shrewd and would screw you. Let's say, not to bring up the Bret Hart story that we all know about, but that's a classic example, what he did to Bret Hart.
Rich, one last thing before we wrap up, and it's kind of a selfish question for myself. What do you miss the most about WFAN days and those times?
Oh, I miss first of all the wide reach of the audience that you're reaching. 50,000 watt station, not only heard in New York, you can hear it out your way now in Pennsylvania and many other places around the country because they could get the signal. But most of all, you know what I miss? I miss the interaction with the fans. I love that. I love talking to the fans, whether they liked me or not, whether it was negative or positive. I love talking to them because if it weren't for the fans, we can't do what we do today, can we? No. And they acknowledged my knowledge of what I was telling them. And it's true right now, still today, a lot of the program hosts on the fan that are much different, basically they get the respect because they're a conduit to getting what they need to know. And I miss that. I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. I've been one for 43 years. So that's what I love to do. And I miss that. And I miss interacting with the fans live like I did at 3 a.m. Excuse me. The fan overall gave me opportunity to move on into doing radio and eventually some TV work as well. Not as big scale as some of the guys are doing over me because I had the pro wrestling stigma on my back, so I've been told. But if I could turn the clock back, I'd do it all over again. I don't care if it was 3 a.m. again. I miss it. And to get up and to do a show like that, to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning, and to be in with Jody Mack. I can't forget Jody McDonald, who gave me that opportunity, who gave it a chance, and it worked. And we got for 3, 4 years. We did it. And Keep It in the Ring started. That's where the Keep It in the Ring developed on that program.
Well, Rich, let my audience know where they can get a hold of you. And because honestly, my childhood on those Saturday nights, Sunday mornings, working at the bagel shop, I used to listen to religiously. You messed me up when the clock would go back and forth.
I know.
That jacked me all up. And I remember.
I know me too.
Yeah, you missed one time. I know you did. Yeah. But it just would jack me up. But those days at the bagel shop, listening to you and Jody, those are memories I'll never forget. And I have to thank you and Jody for that. So where can they get a hold of you?
Well, writing wise, I'm published often on latinosports.com. Do all sports, and I'll throw my boxing and wrestling content in there as well. NewYorkSportsDay.com is another one, and there are some other outlets. Just Google me, Rich Mancuso, and you can find me at Facebook, Rich Mancuso, and also on X, formerly Twitter, at Ring786. Most of all, and I encourage your viewers, your followers, log on to my program as we log on to yours on YouTube Live and String Punk Entertainment. Also, I have a Facebook Keep It in the Ring page that still exists and going strong. 8 p.m. live Eastern every Thursday night. It's me, Keep It in the Ring. And, you know, we analyze and we look ahead with the boxing, the wrestling, some MMA talk, nostalgia. I do a fact of the week. I have some guests on in the boxer. I might have Teofimo Lopez on the Boxing World this coming Thursday night live. And, you know, we do it. And we do it an hour every week live, and it's getting popular. And I appreciate everyone who supports it now and can continue and bring them on. Come on in. 8 p.m. live. Rich Mancuso, Keep It in the Ring on YouTube. Just log on to my channel, Rich Mancuso, and you'll get me. Subscribe. It's free.
That's right. Or subscribe to Rich Mancuso. Keep It in the Ring on YouTube. Rich Mancuso channel. Rich, it is an honor to actually speak to you. It's been all these years. I finally got a hold of you to get you on the channel.
I'm glad you did.
And we can do it again sometime. That'd be great. We could talk boxing.
Yes, get me. Yeah, George, it'd be my pleasure. I love doing shows like this, and you can help me. I can help you. That's what it's all about. You're an old friend, an old follower. Of course, we'll keep it in the ring, right?
Oh, keep it in the ring, Rich. Rich, thank you very much again.
Thank you, George.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.